We have to come together and actually ensure that if we meet all our targets, we actually meet our targets. So they have to be binding in a way that ensures that we are going somewhere. Because right now it really is just lip service a lot of the time.
I've seen the news headlines so many times, like once in a lifetime event. And how many of those have we already lived through? And we're young. I mean, the whole point of this is we're youth. Yeah, there's so many lifetime events. Once in a lifetime, Texas freezing over, once in a lifetime event. And we'll see that these once in a lifetime events keep happening over and over.
In Eritrea, like we are known for producing teff and barley and certain types of wheat, but it's become interesting because certain areas of the land has become so arid that it's difficult to be able to grow those crops that we have known to be eating for centuries.
We have warmer summers, we have shorter winters, and people don't understand that it's related to climate change. They don't really take it into themselves, except if we put it in a narrative of, oh, you will only be able to ski this many days. You'll only be able to go skiing 20 less days, and they're like, oh God, climate change.
It's hard to take time out of your day to be an activist. And that's true for a lot of different movements. But you know, if you have to go to protest, it takes time, it takes money, and often the people who are most affected are the ones who are the least able to have their voice heard in those protests.
We actually did just a street survey things. Like we just pick out random people and ask them like, have you heard of the word sustainability in Chinese? And then I think the first year just like 80% people they have not heard about this word. So I think, and then when we were hanging out together, we were always so hyped up about all these like problems and solutions and all that. But once we get out of this like little bubble, people have not heard about it and they don't know what that means and they don't care.
A lot of African youth have actually, and it's been reported that in the past few months, they have been unable to get the access to even attend COP27, to even be a part of these broader global conversations. So I think that we're seeing who is involved in these conversations around like, what does it mean to combat climate change and the climate crisis. But then also when we think about those few narratives that are in the mainstream media and how that relates to us, right, as like youth activists, we're seeing that there's this disconnect of what it means to be a youth activist as it relates to trying to combat the climate crisis.
Inaccessible just on a surface level because COP27 is in Sharm el-Sheikh and maybe 12 people can afford to go to that thing, right? It's inaccessible because a lot of people cannot afford to attend these things, right? But it's also inaccessible in the sense that I don't think enough work has been done to guarantee or buy public buy-in for these things. Like no matter how correct or right you are, you need hearts and minds, right? And I think you do that by having people feel like they are invested and have a stake in the story, and you do that by telling nuanced climate stories.
Most companies are only focusing on carbon right now, because carbon dioxide or like greenhouse gases is like the most quantifiable metric, just like, okay, a number, and then we're trying to hit, net zero as long as, we do offsets, we do some reduction, and then as long as, plant some trees somewhere, get some carbon credits and get zero and the job is done. But there's a lot more going behind, that number of like carbon. It means a lot of things for the ecosystem, for the communities, everywhere else too.
I think people don't realize that, yes, we're talking about numbers. Oh, we have to give $100 billion to the global south. We have to pay for adaptation. We have to do all these things for loss and damage. But when people talk about loss and damage, they don't realize that that's also loss of human life and of culture, of heritage and generations.
If I ask someone sitting in a certain particular area of the world what they believe the purpose of fighting for climate justice is, you'll get a very different answer. And while that's okay, right, that everyone's kind of fighting for different things, but also ultimately wanting climate justice, I think the crux of the movement should be knowing that we have to reach some level of social equality as it relates to bettering the lives of humans all over the world.
During a normal day, I'm like, okay, I'm throwing away all my trash, my plastics. I'm like, I'm producing so much trash, like as one person in one small town in this one country, like we're producing a lot. I'm like, am I the part of the problem? Like I'm producing so much as well. But then, and also I think the parts that don't feel eco-anxious, I feel kind of ashamed because it's a point of privilege to not feel anxious about the state of the world.
There's a lot of human suffering that you can fit into sort of bad, right? And I think we should be also trying to avoid sort of bad, because sort of bad is happening to millions of people today, and that should matter. So my anxiety is, yeah, we get there, but too late for a lot of people that don't get to say, hurry up.
I think one thing that would help fix it immediately is if we could find ways to have energy storage that's like cheap, accessible, and non-extractable. Because those are the three aspects of it that are currently like the issues behind energy storage. And if we can do that, we can resolve intermittency issues and mean that like renewable energies can fully support our electrical grid, our power grids.
The biggest issue that we're facing is what is our mindset and outlook as it relates to these things that are natural to us, and whether that's land, water, housing. I'm talking about completely changing how we relate to these things that we need for survival.
I feel like the most actionable item is just to eliminate food waste, because it's such like a doable thing, just literally people need to care a little bit more about where their food comes from and how much goes into behind the food, and just not waste food. That's pretty simple. Buy however much you need and eat however much you will finish.
If we do any more of these climate treaties, that whatever emissions we all agree to, we have to come together and actually ensure that if we meet all our targets, we actually meet our targets. So they have to be binding in a way that ensures that we are going somewhere. Because right now it really is just lip service a lot of the time.
I think youth have this incredible resistance, resilience. We're so passionate. Let's say climate change, let's say COP27 or COP28 coming up next year in Abu Dhabi. I think I would have, let's say 50% of national delegations just be young people. I want 50% of boardrooms in mega corporations to be young people. I think that would have such transformative power. And I think also we would be bold enough to go into binding agreements about the future. And I'm just thinking about the imaginary, what would that future be if we take up space and power already now in international negotiations? We're already doing it. It's coming slowly, but I think that would be transformative in international politics.